So you might think it's not the best moment to plough more money into soccer development. But there are clubs like Nottingham Forest that believe development has to happen now to rescue the sport.
We're going ahead with a 2.4 million stand, I think. I think that's what it's costing. Seating about 6 or 7 or 8,000 and incorporating 40 boxes that we can sell off to firms and private individuals and all that type of thing.
Why have you decided to do that sort of work?
We decided to do it because we're short of seats. And we can't afford to keep the present cost of the side we've got at the moment, on the few seats we have. It's essential with a successful football club, you have as many seats as you've got. And by First Division standards, we have very little. We've got just over 8,000 at the moment. And any side and any club that's progressive have to improve the amenities. Plus the fact, I think, that eventually we'll all want to sit down at football matches. We're in a stage of development now in this country at all levels where we're very, very lazy, and we want and demand comfort, and football has got to keep pace with this demand.
Doesn't it worry you might get into the same sort of problem as Chelsea found when they put a large amount of money into their ground and they're still fighting to pay it off?
I would hope not, and it doesn't worry me at all, actually. I'd hope we're better managed than Chelsea, as a football club, I mean, and as a company.
Programme!
If this sort of development work's going to be done, though, where's the money going to come from for it?
It's going to come from the people who pay to come to the turnstiles, like every other bit of money comes from. Everything's paid for by people who pay to come and watch it.
The maximum amount of people allowed in here has decreased to 26,000 now.
Because of safety rules?
Yes, safety rules. And there's been a number of occasions this season, for instance, where we've had to lock the gates. Well, we'd like to do that more often, but we'd like to have comfort in the ground and enlarge their capacity. It's about time we thought about more comfort for the people who pay your wages. But you look around England, you see, the grounds have been there for so long, it's virtually impossible to alter a lot of them. But if you look on the continent and go around Europe, as we tend to do in our job, you will actually see clubs which are for the family. And the football is just one of the items that take place in there. Now, a new stadium, starting from rock bottom, as is possible in Southampton, could benefit the whole area. So here you have a situation where you've got a city which is not taken too seriously football-wise. And one of the reasons is because they haven't got a tradition of doing exceptionally well until the last few years. But then they say, well, look at the ground they've got. Can it last, really? And they're like, right, if you don't get better facilities, it won't last. When if you look at our pitch now, it is flooded. You know, will it be on the weekend, the game or not? Will it? I don't know. But you start the stadium from scratch, you've got all the new technology, you can plant grounds, grass grounds, which I am told can be played on 12 months a year, you know, if you do it from scratch.
It's not just a problem for the league clubs either. Even Wembley is on such hard times they're having to run guided tours at £1 a head. Every little helps, I suppose.
Like all the wave. Go on, wave to the Queen. Can you not? Wave to the Queen. There she is. Proof she's there. There she is. Right. Now, those double doors I showed you at the beginning of the tour, they lead directly into that room.
In world terms, this traditional centre of the soccer empire is second-rate, and nobody knows that better than the men whose teams have to play there.
They're poor and they're miserable. And I just got a bill in yesterday for 2 dozen lagers and 2 dozen beers, and I had to pay for them, you know. That sort of thing would never happen anywhere else. It shouldn't happen anywhere else. That was the beers that my lads had the last time we were there, and the gate receipts were £400,000, and yet I've got to pay money for beers. Pathetic. Something's wrong there. You know the reason? Cloughie's put his finger on the nail. We have not got our own stadium. That is owned by a separate company, who probably have got as much feeling for the football as they have for the horse show, which comes on the week after, or the rugby league, and the lacrosse and all that sort of thing. That's where that's wrong. You know, we've got a tremendous national product, and we haven't even got a stadium to show it off in. And the facilities are poor. I was there for the England-Czechoslovakia game, and half the pitch was frozen, and we're sliding around all over the place. Gate receipts, 300,000, no heating, you know, miles behind the times. Yeah. That's why we are English, that's why we're different.
At the moment, all clubs can do is go it alone. Take, for example, the surprisingly successful Watford. Already their plans are laid for expansion of the broken-down vicarage ground and a greater involvement with the Watford community. In very much the American style, Watford has a link with show business through its chairman, Elton John. He feels more sponsorship is inevitable.
I think it's absolute necessity. I mean, it already happens in the Bundesliga in West Germany and in various other leagues throughout Europe. I don't really think the clubs can survive and without it. I don't really think the way the Germans do it, I think it's very, very, it's not vulgar. I'm a bit of a, I don't like vulgarity too much on the sort of presentation of soccer. I'm a bit of a traditionalist, but I do not see how clubs can survive unless they get a sponsor. Unless, I mean, you're talking about Manchester United, but even those sort of clubs, when now you reach the figure of a £1 million player, where do you go from there, you know?
Do you think at the moment the English supporter is getting a raw deal?
They're getting the worst deal of all time. And we've had to put our prices up to stay in business, but they get no toilet facilities. They have to stand out there in the pouring rain. They're paying a lot of money for nothing. And basically, most of the board of directors don't seem to care. I mean, it's a joke. It's Victorian. Most of the grounds are Victorian. They were built in an age and where no one, I mean, they stand idle most times. They're used 3 times in a fortnight. As I say, it's very hard to buy a programme in some grounds. The toilet facilities are dreadful, especially for women. It's not easy to buy food. It's an uncomfortable, even the seats in some of the stadiums are very uncomfortable. I think major sporting facilities in the country are just disgusting. And that's where Americans have got the advantage over us, because their facilities, it's just programmed to make people feel comfortable. Over here, we pack them into a football stadium and it's usually a nightmare for them.
Forms of sponsorship will come into football, but it's already in now at very, very minor levels. We have our kit sponsored and we advertise on our tracksuits and that type of thing. Why the sponsorship? We're all a little bit wary of it in case they want to actually take us over, so to speak. You know, being taken over by a big firm. I can think of the North East, for example, where I used to work at the ICI, a club taken over by the ICI. Perhaps that club might be worried about losing its identity.
I mean, you wouldn't like to see the situation that they have in the States, for example, the North American League, where someone like Warner Communications will just buy a club lock, stock and barrel and own it.
I would like them possibly to buy it. I like it in theory, but the practice of it frightens me a little bit. And the situation in America frightens me a little bit, where, as I say, you lose your identity and they would want to run it lock, stock and barrel. And I'm always wary of people who want to run things when they don't know very much about them. So that's what happens to directors, actually, when they try to run football clubs. I'm one of the people that are worried, because it's a very, very great temptation for a young man he's involved in a short period of time in his career, a footballer is, and we'll talk about Trevor Francis, because he's a topical one at the moment. He was offered in excess of $300,000 for playing 3 close seasons in America. Now, at the age of 24, 25, if you and I, Eric, had been asked to go to work in a place like America for $300,000, I'd have thought you and I would have been on the first boat. Now, this applies to Trevor Francis also. There's nothing a matter in it at all. He's quite entitled to sell his ability wherever the market demands it. And I'm all for him going. But, of course, my basic responsibility is to retain and maintain the standard of football in this country. That is why I fought Trevor Francis as much as I did and restricted his going away to 1 year instead of 3. But eventually, if football takes off as we expect it to take off in America, then not only players, as I've said, and if you have mentioned, managers, coaches and everybody will eventually finish up in the American League.
Would you consider going?
I would go to America overnight if I was offered a length of contract to suit me, of course.